Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Skype's being a little strange today, so hopefully you're able to hear him. If not, I'll boost it on the podcast. Make sure you're going to southboundsports.com. You can go to our website, get all of our episodes there. And I also wanted to apologize because people are posting on Facebook, apparently, and they don't let me know, which I'm sure just crushes our engagement on Facebook, so they probably don't show as many people. But I'll probably start checking it more often. So if you want to comment, go ahead, do it there, or just go to our website. You can subscribe to your show. Most of them make it there anyway. So keep downloading. Thanks for checking it out. I always mean to plug it at the beginning, and I always forget. So I wanted to make sure to bring it up this time. Another thing too, I wanted to give a shout out to Florida basketball player. Let me make sure I got his name right. Keontae Johnson, because in the Florida State game, Matt, were you watching the game?
Yes.
He just collapsed. I saw the clip. I watched it at least 5 times because I was trying to see what his teammate reaction was, because it looked like the one guy was trying to get the ref. He collapsed in the middle of the game, and then they took him away and posted that he was in critical condition and they induced a coma. So I was extremely worried that he was going to have brain damage or something, but apparently they were able to get him up, and he's been talking with family, so prayers out to him. That's a scary thing. You were watching the game. Is there anything else that I missed on that?
It was just a freak thing that was going on, and there was speculation that because he had already had COVID earlier in the year, that may have been a contributing factor to him collapsing, because there's not a lot of research out on the residual effects of people that are COVID positive, and especially being an athlete in top physical condition, that they were suspecting that had something to do with it. But I guess we'll know more as his condition improves and more information becomes available.
Yeah, because I was going to say, the Big Ten, that was their initial findings, was a paper that it was like some research paper that others were trying to debunk or whatever, saying that there wasn't enough proof that there could be heart issues. So that would have just been heartbreaking if, after playing sports for a while, if it actually, that was a cause of it and it could have been avoided by not playing. I know that they scanned for heart issues, because if you remember, a few years ago, even Michigan was having Mo Hurst drafted. He was supposed to be a top pick, and the heart issues came out that it could affect him later in life more than what it would in college, and so he fell off the draft boards. And there were a couple other players, a Penn State running back that had to medically retire this year. So they do scan for that stuff. So it's definitely scary whenever you're watching a D1 basketball game and a guy just falls down like that. So prayers out to him. Hopefully he gets a full recovery, and hopefully it's not COVID related, but we'll see. Getting into the NFL stuff now. Steelers, do you think if Ben doesn't throw that pick 6 before the half that they win?
There's a possibility, but I still just think that when you look at the last couple weeks, I still just feel like their run game is not there. And the teams that are pushing for the better playoff seeds have a stronger, more consistent ground game. And I really haven't commented a whole lot on it, because I'm waiting for it to pick up, because they have enough of a consistent passing game that it should be pulling the defenders back, and it should be leaving the holes open for the running backs. And I just feel like there's not enough of a burst coming out of the backfield to really give them that balanced threat that they need to take the pressure off of Roethlisberger. I feel like they've gotten away with it because the run pass distribution has just been so slanted towards just, all right, Ben will just get us out of this, and you're just completely living by that sword. And you see the difference in the offense when he's injured or when he's not in the lineup, like we saw last year. But I feel like when they just leave everything on Ben's shoulders, it just puts the offense in so much more of a predicament.
That's why it's scary whenever you're looking at the team and how they were undefeated for as long as they were, because James Conner has been in and out, and he's on the injured list again this week, going into week 15. And I mean, even in the game, though, when he does play, he averaged 1.8 yards a carry. So you're not even getting, I don't know if you're getting to the hole. I saw some footage where people were trying to show that there were holes that were opened up. They're just closing fast. And when you have middling running backs that aren't able to power through the hole or get there with speed, that's it. I mean, if you had a guy like Derrick Henry that could hit the hole 2 yards in, break a tackle, get 5 yards, that's not what's happening. Like, they're getting hit and they're just done. Or they're trying to do like Le'Veon Bell, where you're waiting, but you don't have the explosiveness that he had. And that's why whenever he was available again, I think that would have been the piece that Pittsburgh, I mean, if you're going to try, and maybe because they figured, well, Ben's back, let's get the locker room. I mean, I'm sure they talked to Ben to see, like, all right, would you be interested in this? Because otherwise, like, if they let him go to the Chiefs, it's like, okay, like, why would you do that? They're already the number one. That's your number one opponent right now if you're going to hold. But it must not have worked, because that would have been the guy to pick up and really put this team over the top. But again, he could just blow it up too. So maybe they were just too comfortable and they thought he's not going to be an impact player anywhere else, because Ben uses like the short passing game to open up everything else. But the scary thing is right now, it's not working. So like you said, it's all Ben. If he goes out, they're done. I don't even think they would be a 6-win team, like, if I'm being honest. And that's the scary part, because they're just going to start sitting back and just letting him make mistakes.
But how much of that do you think is the offense compared to the number of injuries that Pittsburgh's defense is facing, and now they're having to compensate for that?
Well, the defense, I mean, you knew that was going to catch up with them eventually. And in the league now, it's a high-scoring league. Like, what was the final score from last night's game? It was like 40-something to 40-something or 30-something. I don't even know. It was high. And you just need to be able to score points. Because if you're not able to run, your defense is going to be on the field, which is going to make it even worse. So you're not throwing passes to just eat up time, because my other key on here, too many drop passes. So, like, you're dropping passes, which stops the clock. You can't run the ball to keep the clock moving. And the time is not on your side. So if you can't do either of those things, check the ball down like Drew Brees to keep the game going. Because that's another key. Like, the Saints had a lot of success for the longest time without a power running game, or like a substantial running game, for that reason. Because you're able to just check down and just pass the ball to every single person. Like, they never really had standout receivers either. I think that's why whenever that one call went against them in the playoffs a year or two ago, that's why so many fans are upset, because they finally had some big stars to complement Drew Brees. Now Drew Brees is hurt. They're talking about rushing him back. How can you be rushed back from a collapsed lung? Like, I know the guy's old and he doesn't have that much time left, but if I was him, I would be saying, like, yo, that's the definition of what so many retired players have been complaining about. Like, the NFL does not care. Like, if I had that situation and then you're trying to get back into a game, like, I know they're going to give you the best equipment, but come on. You don't want to rush him back. That's just a bad look for the league. So it's just, I don't know what they can do. But I know, looking at it, it's going to be something that's going to eat them in the playoffs. They had the short week, a bunch of games changed, and then Buffalo comes in and has the time of possession for 10 extra minutes. It makes a difference. So You can scheme around it, but when you're not getting first downs, you're not moving the ball. You had 100 less yards, 7 less first downs, 21-14. So you had like a third less. I don't know. It's not a recipe for success. I thought they would lose this game. I thought it would come down to a field goal. I still think if he doesn't throw the pick six, it's a little bit different in the second half. I mean, they still can't really move the ball, but at least they would have had momentum. And you come out, Buffalo gets the ball back. Instead, you have the lead. They could have kicked the field goal. I mean, they were driving, and I know that that's what they were trying to do, but that totally swung the game. And then the third quarter, they came out flat probably off that. So, I don't know. Do you have anything else from that game?
No.
I mean, you're getting into the tail end of the season, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now. Shut it down. Like, you're favored against the Bengals. If you have a lead, you're double-digit favorites. I know you're on the road. If you have a lead in that game, you need to give Ben a rest. Because your last two games are against the Colts and the Browns right now, two potential playoff teams. You don't want to get into two playoffs type games before jumping right into the playoffs without a break. The Steelers will lose in the first round. I hate to say it, but we've seen it in the past. If Ben's banged up, makes one or two mistakes, he doesn't have the running game to just sit back on. And it really comes down to matchups, because there are some teams I think the Steelers match up better against. So depending on who they're going to end up playing. But right now, if you're looking at the playoff projections or whatever, the NFL Steelers would be the second seed. They wouldn't get the bye. So they would end up playing possibly the Ravens or the Dolphins. As it sits right now, they're both tied at 8-4. And so that's something like you don't want to just be facing the Ravens again. A rivalry game right after you played the Browns and the Colts going into that. They're trying to get things going. I mean, it might work out in your favor, but each week just looks worse and worse. That's why I would just rest the team. Do you agree?
I think they got to win next week, because I believe that clinches the playoff spot for them.
Well, they already clinched the playoff spot because Miami lost.
Or the division.
Yeah. Well, they're up 2 games on the Browns, and they have the winning record against them. Well, I guess they would play that last game. I don't know if that last game would make a difference. Because if the Browns win, they could theoretically have to win one more. But I don't care about the division.
I'd rather have them just win that game and then be done with it. And then if they wanna rest Ben the following week, fine. But historically, when you look at teams that have rested players, it hasn't bode well for them. And if you're having to rest people, that means that you're really banged up and you're not really set to make a run. So I think that you look at it that way too. So I mean, Pittsburgh's vulnerable because the last 2 weeks they've played tough teams and they've gotten beat. And with the earlier part of the year, you were dealing with rosters that were banged up and guys missing because of COVID. That we're going to see what this team truly is made of these next couple weeks.
And that's why I don't want to rest all of the players, but I think you got to rest Ben. And I know that would be on him. I know he wants to play, but he came out and said after the game that he either needs to play better or just retire. And, I mean, right now he still gives them the best chance to win the Super Bowl. But he needs to be healthy and not banged up. And that's why, like I said, I don't care about winning. You already clinched the playoffs. Who cares about the division? If anything, falling back to not have to play the Ravens if they make it. And who knows? Maybe they would end up with, maybe the Dolphins win that last spot and they take it. Because otherwise you're looking at 3 teams from the AFC North, which is a possibility. Because the Dolphins, their strength of victory is so low that if they get in, they're going to be backing their way in to the playoffs. That's my feeling. Like, I don't think Baltimore is going to be losing too many other games. They're playing the Jaguars, the Giants, and the Bengals. Like, that's not a murderer's row by any means. Bengals and Jaguars should be wins automatically. The Giants, I would say yes. I know that they're battling for their own spot, but the way the Redskins are playing, I just don't think that the Giants are a real threat. So, going back through the AFC, I'm thinking the Ravens get in, the Browns get in, and I think the AFC North gets 3 teams in with the Steelers already clinching. So, at this point, why try to fight for that last seed? Plus, even if you, like, let's say, the way things fall, you could end up even playing the Colts with Phillip Rivers. You don't want to play a veteran quarterback against his defense. Not with so many guys banged up. So I don't know if Devin Bush or anyone's coming back. I think that a lot of those guys are out for the entire season. So just play, rest up, try to get some other guys some experience because you might need them. Do you think? What are your thoughts on that last playoff spot?
I don't know.
You don't think it's the Raiders for sure?
Well, I think they're eliminated at this point, and they did the right thing.
They're the 9. They're 9 right now. They're only 1 game back.
Well, they fired their defensive coordinator, so they got a shot. They're already speculating to try to hire Wade Wilson. Bring that big defense, and then you got a contender.
Just keep making changes, and Gruden will be there. He's there for 10 years or whatever. How many years is this? 3? 2?
Yeah.
So he's not even halfway. The other teams that could sneak in, the Broncos, which I said got screwed out of that quarterback thing, barely. I don't think that they're going to have a chance. And then, of course, the Patriots, which you never know. But with the Ravens having such an easy schedule, they're going to be just counting on the Dolphins losing, which they do play the Patriots, the Raiders, and the Bills. So if any team's going to drop out, it's the Dolphins. That's why I said I think the Ravens get that last spot, and that's your stuff. It just depends. I think the Patriots are too far behind at this point.
I mean, it's crazy to think that you have the Ravens fighting for that last playoff spot when a couple weeks ago it was them. It was how are they going to play against the Chiefs for the AFC Championship? And Pittsburgh wasn't really even in the discussion. The
crazy thing is they wouldn't even be getting in at this point if they didn't expand the playoffs. I mean, I know that they beat the Browns, which would have put them close, but the Browns are still playing the Giants, the Jets, and the Steelers. It's not like they have a bunch of tough games left either. So in that scenario, if the Steelers would sit, they would basically be handing a playoff spot to the Browns. Now, of course, the Browns could choke. I don't want to be one of those people that overwrite the Browns and jump on the hype train only to watch them self-destruct time and time again. So, I don't know. I just think that you're looking at schedules, and then the Colts, they have the Texans, the Steelers, and the Jaguars. Texans and Jaguars are both bad. You have that Steelers game we already mentioned. They really only need to win one more to probably be in for sure. Because then, I mean, you have the tiebreakers or whatever. I don't know. It's weird. There's a lot of teams in the AFC that are looking at double-digit wins. 6 of them right now. Potentially 8 if things go their way. That's unheard of. I mean, we always see teams like that are 7-9 getting to the 16th playoff, not having almost all the teams get right in. Anything else you got for the AFC?
No.
All right, the NFC. The Packers take over the Saints, and I mentioned earlier, they're talking about rushing Drew Brees back. At this point, does it matter? The Packers are kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde, and I really don't know if it makes a difference. Like, Drew Brees has been out for so long. Does the extra bye week really help the Saints? Like, I would almost rather have them come in and then end up playing the Cardinals as would be the matchup right now. Like, have Drew Brees come back for like the last week or two of the season. They would play the Panthers and potentially the Vikings. They have the Chiefs this week. They're not going to rush him back for the Chiefs. I would just say no. Then I would focus on potentially the Vikings, let it be up to him. And then if you lose the bye, who cares? Because you have a better chance. You're playing a worse team in that first round. Let's be honest. And Drew Brees has been out of the game. So he needs the reps. He's not going to come back from a collapsed lung and just be playoff form. It's not going to happen. So that's my thought. It doesn't matter for the Saints. The Cardinals, I think, would be a good matchup for them because the Cardinals like to score, and Drew Brees coming back, just get into a shootout. Get one or two stops on defense and see what happens. I think they could really hold on to that spot. And then looking at the Buccaneers, they're right behind the Seahawks by one game for that first division leader slot against basically the Washington Redskins at this point. So they could be sitting there. So that was one of the things where they didn't really care about the division. They just wanted a good first round matchup to get things rolling. That's what the rumors came out. So we'll see if those are true or not. I don't know if the Seahawks can hold on to that spot. Because they started to play decently well, but they got to play the Redskins. Then they got to play the Rams. And then potentially the 49ers, which they're kind of a mess right now. I don't know how they're not eliminated from the playoffs, but they don't have a lot of teams eliminated in the NFC just because of the East. So you're looking at that Seattle schedule compared to the Tampa Bay one, where they're just playing the Falcons, Lions, and then the Falcons again. Like, I think that would just be 3 wins, and right there, they're locking it up. They'll be playing the NFC East leader. Although Eli Manning's not there anymore, so I don't know if that would be an issue for Tom or not.
I don't even know why you're talking about the NFC East because we already know that's Riverboat Ron. I told you a couple weeks ago.
But Alex Smith, he left the game with another leg injury. I think did he come back? I can't remember.
Look, I'm not going to count every time he goes down with a leg injury.
But he makes the team. He's a different quarterback. Like, he fits in. He knows the stuff. He's a good quarterback. Since they've been putting him in, they've won like 4 in a row. I don't know if he was in before that. But that's all they needed. Turn it around. They play the Seahawks. This will be a big test because then they go against the Panthers, which at this point they could be giving up for all we know. McCaffrey is rumored to not be back again. They're just letting it ride. And then they play the Eagles, which they're in the middle of a Hurts experiment that looks like it could work out for them.
With the Hurts experiment, before you...
Go ahead.
Let's just hypothetically say, if Philly's willing to deal, like, say, a 3 and a 5, would it be worth trading him to Pittsburgh?
Who?
Wentz.
No, we don't want him, Matt. I talk trash on him every week. Why would I want that? Give me one good reason why he would be a fit in Pittsburgh.
Because he's already used to Pennsylvania temperatures.
That has nothing to do with it. The team hates him.
Who hates him?
His own teammates. They came out and said that. He has no control over the locker room. They don't respect him. That came out like the same year that the Nick Foles thing came out. And then that was the players basically telling the owners, like, yo, if you're getting rid of someone, trade Wentz while we have the pieces. And they didn't. And they were like, you know what? We're going to go with this guy. And then they're like, we don't know what happened. That one Super Bowl that we had, good times. But I don't know what else. Like, why would anyone want to take that game? That's the kind of move that I could see the Bears making or something. Even though they come back to Trubisky, it's like, okay, now you guys are going to be back and forth. They had Foles. Not a good look. They win. They play the Vikings, the Jaguars, and the Packers. They could back in to that last spot. I don't know if that'd make it easier or harder for the Saints, but I just don't see too many people or too many teams out there that are going to say, yeah, we want Wentz at this point. Like, everybody knows who he is. I mean, teams didn't even want Cam Newton. Cam Newton's more dynamic than Wentz.
Yeah, but I think Cam Newton was going to potentially cost more money, though, wasn't he?
I don't know. I thought they gave Wentz a pretty big contract.
Well, I know Wentz is still working off of his initial contract. Where I thought with Cam Newton being a veteran, he was going to be owed more money up front.
Oh, that's a big question. I thought Wentz signed another one. Let's see if I can find the information.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of someone that when we're looking at who's on Pittsburgh's roster right now, and not to say that they couldn't potentially find a guy, but they don't have time to let someone wait temporarily and be like that developmental project. They need someone that's a plug and play guy, and I don't know that there's someone in the draft right now that you can say, oh yeah, we can take this guy. Like when Roethlisberger was drafted, they potentially could have started him out the gate, I think, and he could have held his own. There's not many quarterbacks that you can just draft straight up without moving into like a Trevor Lawrence type situation and going with the number one pick, but they're not going to move to the number one spot or number two spot overall.
Yeah, because even then, you have to have pieces around them. Like, if the Steelers would have got Burrow, I don't think you would have seen a drastically different team. Like, you would have probably saw a Steelers team that looked like last year, because those guys have to work into it. And the Wentz contract, he did sign. So the Eagles are basically screwed. They signed him for a $128 million 4-year contract.
But I think if they trade him, they're only on the hook for like 40, or the team's only on the hook for 40.
I don't know. They said that they would have 25 in dead cap. I don't know if that means that there's a trade or not.
Because I thought part of that was what I thought part of it was that there was like 40 mil that if a team was willing to eat that.
Yeah, well, they're not going to get a team that's going to trade straight up for that contract. That contract is ridiculous. That's $22 million a year at some point. So like next year, they're jumping from his base rookie of $1 million this year to $15 million next year. Of course, they're going to wait it out for him because no one's going to take that bait. They're just debating right now, he's not even worth the $1 million that he's getting. So they're like, wow, we signed this, and now what? Like they're gonna just eat it, or they're gonna have to try to trade and move things around. Like I just don't know. I don't think that I would take anything on that contract. So, I mean, you have a team like Mahomes. They signed his for like 10 years. He won a Super Bowl. I mean, just do it.
So did Wentz.
He didn't win. He didn't even play. Did he even play in that playoff?
No. Foles did. But he played in the regular season. He got him to that point.
Matt, that doesn't matter, as you have seen.
It definitely matters, because what if Foles would have started? He hasn't set the world on fire since he left the Eagles. All he's done since he left Philly was just got injured.
Yeah, he's old. He's been injured. He knew the system. They could have had him, Matt. They could have had him for like 1 or 2 more years, and then got rid of that Wentz contract, and then they wouldn't really have missed a beat if they would have brought in like Hurts anyway. Like, what's the difference? If they would have went from, they went to Wentz. Everyone knew that was a bad idea, but now they're going to go right from Wentz signing a gigantic contract. That's basically what he's like the 9th best paid quarterback. What team is going to pick that up? The Lions? If they can get rid of Stafford? It's like, I don't even know. The 49ers signed Garoppolo. That's looking like another bad deal just because of how injured he gets all the time. I don't know. Like, Roethlisberger is less than that. I don't know about per year, though. They don't let you really see Yeah, like his Roethlisberger's signing bonus is his contract, which is like $12 million. He's going to make less than Wentz. So why would the Steelers take that? They have a guy that's just eating contract so they can put together a roster to compete. And Wentz is no positive. Like, I would rather see them take a shot at your man, Jameis Winston, which you know is a bad move. If he can't even play for the Saints, you know he's not good.
But I wonder what the dynamic is for that, though. Like, is that Peyton trying to hold value for Taysom Hill?
Why would he be doing that, though? What would be the upside to that?
I mean, to just show the loyalty to the other guy in the system. Like, I don't know.
I mean, possibly. If you're looking at it and then you're like, okay, we got this guy. I know he's not really have that many reps, but can we win with him? Or you throw Jameis in there, it's going to totally mess up the system because maybe he's not invested. I don't know. But they're definitely making that decision to see what happens. But
I mean, between the two, I would definitely take Jameis over Wentz. I mean, I think when you're like Wentz is 27 years old. To me, that's part of the upside. That if he's locked in and you have him under contract, then play it out. I mean, who would you rather have, Hodges, Rudolph, or Wentz?
But Wentz is getting paid millions of dollars more. Like, it's going to blow up the entire roster. I would rather just have, if you're going to have a guy that's...
you don't know. You can always restructure that, too.
I don't know how. I mean, you're going to be traded. They're going to have to eat some of that. The Eagles are. But if they could somehow get around it, but he's not going to be the type of guy that moves the offense. Like, I'd rather just make a move on someone else that, I don't know, even like just another veteran that's been around for a while. Like, what if you could just grab Matt Stafford? I don't know if he's going to be retiring soon, but I mean, it's worked out for the Colts. They lost Andrew Luck, bring in Phillip Rivers. Now they're looking at the playoffs. No one's really talking about them. They could be a sneaky good team that makes a run. Like, I would rather have the Steelers move in that direction than Wentz. Like, is there a guy, I mean, Stafford, maybe he doesn't want to do it, but is there a guy like that is trying to blow up their entire franchise, which is exactly what the Lions are doing? So if Ben is going to step away, if I'm going to waste that much money, I want a guy like Matt Stafford. Hell, even Matt Ryan. I know he makes way more. I think he's like
both of those guys, you're kicking the tires for kicking the tires. You're looking only trading off maybe 3 or 4 years. I don't know that you're going to get that type of.
But the Steelers' defense is good right now. So if I don't say that you sign those guys and don't draft a quarterback. I think you can sign them and draft a quarterback late in the first round. I mean, look at where the Packers got Aaron Rodgers. I mean, you have Ben. At this point, they've tried to bring guys in to learn under Ben. It hasn't worked out. So I'm saying don't blow it up. I mean, your team was just undefeated with a competent quarterback. He's not even lighting the world on fire.
But I think that Aaron Rodgers comparison isn't fair because the Aaron Rodgers comparison follows the same mindset as the Steve McNair format, where when Tennessee drafted him, they had him sitting behind Cody Carlson, and they let him wait, and they had him wait until his contract was at a point where they had to play him. And he was in that system long enough with the consistency and longevity. Same with Rodgers. He sat behind Favre for long, and then they finally put him in that situation. Like, they finally pushed him to be the starter. I don't think that's the same in Pittsburgh because they don't have that guy in waiting that's learning this. I mean, I think Rudolph was supposed to be that guy, but he's not getting it done.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying this year. Like, I'm saying if Ben says, I'm going to retire, and if I'm the owner of the Steelers, what I'm doing is I'm reaching out to Matt Stafford and the Lions right away. Because they're bringing in a new coach. They're going to want to redo their entire thing. And I'm saying, like, hey, are you interested in playing 3 or 4 years? Like, I'm not even sure. Let's look it up, quarterback by age. But you're going into the draft, and you're saying, hey, you know what we're going to do? Like, we're bringing you in as a veteran, but we're going to be actively drafting a quarterback to sit behind you and learn and potentially work with even Ben to try to do that, because we've been trying to do it for the past couple of years and it hasn't worked out. So, like, you're coming into the draft and you're saying, I can get a guy later in the draft. I mean, look at where the Chiefs got Mahomes. Like, they traded up to get Devin Bush. You're telling me they can't trade up to get a quarterback off of his big board? I just don't. I think it's definitely workable. I'll see. Let's take a look and see the NFL quarterbacks. The youngest, I mean, Tom Brady. He's just an animal. But if you're going through just a list, I mean, I don't even know if this is up to date though. Let's see. Let's see if I can find one. If I can just get him his age. So Matt Stafford is only, what, 32? I mean, they could potentially have him for longer than that. I don't know if the Lions are going to want to bring in a new quarterback to try to get him, but that's just one name that I was just thinking of throwing out. So he's younger than I thought. I was thinking he's like 35. But I mean, you could look at the same thing with the Falcons. They're winning. Matt Ryan is 35. His salary's low. He's doing the same exact thing that Ben's doing. He's taking the $1 million salary and just getting the rest of the signing bonus. So the Steelers could potentially move right into that same exact mold. But I don't know if the Falcons are going to blow it up, because they didn't pick a coach yet, did they?
No.
Those are the two teams that are bringing in new coaches. New coaches normally want their own quarterback. I mean, if you really wanted a stopgap guy, why not talk to the Jets? They're going to be getting rid of Sam Darnold. As much as I don't like him, but you can't tell me that he's not better than what they have on the roster right now. He's young. He's better than Wentz, Matt, for your situation. He doesn't have the big contract. He's still in his rookie years. He's only 23. You still don't really know what you have with him. What if he came into a great system like Pittsburgh? You can't tell me you wouldn't want that.
I would say I would take Darnold over Wentz, but I still think I would take Jameis over Darnold.
But why?
Because and taking my Florida State bias out of it, I think that when you look at Arians' shit system in Tampa Bay and what he's been dealing with, like, he had less weapons than Brady, and he was leading the league in passing. Brady's not blowing the doors off in that same system. That's saying that maybe it's not him. And I'm not saying that it's his fault that he's not starting in New Orleans, but if he were to get the job, if he were to get the starting nod, I think the more that I think about it, is you start Taysom Hill knowing that when Drew Brees comes back, you're handing the ship back over to Drew Brees. Like, it's an easier, hey, this is a temporary thing. Whereas, like, no one's going to argue when Drew Brees comes back, hey, Taysom Hill needs to go back to his, like, tight end, wide receiver, halfback split role. Whereas if Jameis comes back in and he does as good, if not better, then it becomes this quarterback controversy of, do you start the younger guy, do you start the older veteran?
And surprisingly, I'm looking at it now, his salary isn't as high as I thought, which is crazy, because I thought that they said when we had potentially talked about this earlier, that the Steelers would have had to put like $14 million on him or $10 million or something because of the veteran. But they said that his base salary right now, like, he would have made $1 million total.
Yeah.
Now he had a higher cap hit.
Now he took less to play for Sean Payton, and he was willing to do that to play.
Yeah, but I'm looking at this now, and I'm saying that Darnold, you have locked up till 2021, so you only have him for 2 years. So, like, if you were going to make that move now, I don't know if you'd have to throw him a bunch of money to get him to re-sign, because I don't know what type of suitors he's going to get. So you might be able to wheel and deal and add like 2 years onto that. I guess you'd have him for 1 year. But Jameis would kind of be the same thing. Like, you'd still get the benefit of Sam Darnold's season low thing. Plus, the Jets might be willing to give you other things with them just to take them off their hands. Like, you might just be able to unload some of the lower round picks because they're not going to keep them. There's zero chance you pass up Trevor Lawrence. I mean, do you agree?
I don't think you pass on them, but I also worry. Like, honestly, what I think if I'm the owner of the Jets, what I do is I draft Trevor Lawrence, knowing that my team is absolute crap right now, and I'm going to protect him by not forcing him to be the starting quarterback and giving him the David Carr syndrome, where he was drafted by the Texans, got absolutely throttled, and then it just completely stunted his development because he had nobody around him and was like getting sacked like close to 60 times a year for his first 3 seasons in the NFL. I think what you do is either you let Darnold be the cannon fodder, and you build the offensive line, the running game. I mean, you already have the running game with Le'Veon.
But, I mean, just to wrap this up, I think going with that, my initial thought was maybe not even just focused on Darnold, because I don't want to go down that train. What will the Jets do? What will they want to? Well, like, let's say if you just get a veteran guy like Stafford, you sign him for 4 years, and you say, like, look, we're bringing you in, you're going to be the guy because we want to see if you can take advantage of this defense, kind of like the Broncos did with Peyton Manning. But they didn't go ahead and get a big-time quarterback behind him. Like, what their problem was, their defense is still pretty good. I know that they've had some major injuries this year, but their quarterback situation's a mess. So you say, like, look, we know that Trevor Lawrence is going to go number 1, and then you have other quarterbacks that are still going to be on the draft board. You have Justin Fields this year, Trey Lance, which is supposed to be a big-time get at North Dakota State, that you might be able to get later in the first round. And that's where I was bringing up the Aaron Rodgers thing. They got him like with the 20-something pick. And so it worked out for them. If the Steelers were to waste a late first-round pick to get a quarterback, that's not a big deal. Like, you also have Zach Wilson, and I think a sneaky one is going to be Alabama's Mac Jones. And I'll say Alabama hasn't drafted big-time quarterbacks, but they've also not looked as good on offense as they have this year. I know it's a weird year, but maybe they actually have a quarterback that they're not relying on. I mean, they had Hurts, they had a lot of running with Tua and him. Like, now they just have an actual traditional quarterback, pro-style quarterback, I guess, that more fits the Steelers' mold. They're not running the same system as what the Ravens would get. They might be able to get him late and then focus on fixing that run game. So, I mean, Stafford could be there. He's a good guy. I mean, he's used to not having a run game. Perfect, Matt. Bring him in and say, look, we got to build a run game around you. Like, you have some weapons out here at receiver. They drop some passes, but you play for the Lions. So, like, we can get you some help. We might be able to get you to the playoffs. And then that's a win. So that's my final NFL thought. You're going through, I think my man Tom Brady and the Seahawks are going to be battling it out for that right to play the Redskins right now. I don't know if the Giants catch them, but that's my thing. And then it's just going to be who moves what pieces. Because the Eagles are looking to move Wentz. and the Jets are going to be looking to move Darnold. I don't know if they're going to. You don't bring in a brand new coach, draft a rookie, and then have Sam Darnold on your team and give him that controversy. I mean, look what happened with the Giants. It was only a matter of time before Daniel Jones even overtook Eli Manning. And Darnold's not no Eli Manning. So, anything else you got for the NFL?
No.
All right. College football rankings. I have this on here. I wanted to talk about it. I honestly think that they're ruining the sport. And I'll say this outright. I don't want to just complain about Iowa State being high this year, but I did have some stats. The NFL TV ratings, the top 15 shows on television this year have all been NFL games. So the NFL is winning. Their TV ratings are up. I think I saw one where they said it's the highest rating they had for one of the games in like 6 years. Because the NFL is actually intriguing this year. You have the Chiefs on top. You had an undefeated Steelers. You have the Packers and Saints trading back and forth in the NFC. It's exciting stuff. College football, their ratings are falling off. And they keep just pointing and saying, well, coronavirus. People are stuck inside and they're watching the NFL games. It's not just that. Some of the other sports you can say, the NBA and NHL were definitely affected because their schedules were pushed up against NFL seasons because of how they waited too long. So, of course, they can claim that. College football, this is your normal time. Like, I know you're a little bit later in the season this year. It doesn't matter. It's not all of this. What I think is definitely killing it is the playoffs. There is zero intrigue. They announced the college football playoff rankings today. And I don't think that before you would see it blowing up on Twitter and stuff. I mean, I saw it trending a bit, but people just don't care this year because you've been having the same exact teams in the playoffs every year. Alabama, Clemson, basically. I know Florida State made it once from the ACC. Ohio State a good chunk of the time. And then pick them for your last team. Oklahoma. And they're setting Oklahoma up to get in anyway. They bumped Iowa State all the way to number 6. They have 2 losses. Guess who they play in their championship game, Matt? Oklahoma. Guess who's going to jump up there? I mean, they have Iowa State right behind Texas A&M just in case. Just in case Iowa State beats Oklahoma in a close one, they can still keep them out. There's zero chance of Iowa State getting in. I would be shocked if they got in. They would rather put in Notre Dame. And I would say I wouldn't be shocked if Clemson just blows the doors off Notre Dame this week. And then you're looking at, all right, who do we put in? Who do we put in? But there's not really any intrigue because all they have to do is fall back on it and say, Notre Dame and Clemson, they already played once. Let's put them up for a third-time matchup. The ratings will tank because people don't care. You can say, oh, it's Notre Dame. They're going to be the rankings. But I looked at the rankings last week or 2 weeks ago or whatever. Let's see if I can find the latest one. Like Notre Dame, they're not bringing in the ratings that people would expect. So, like, their Clemson game was 10 million people. Other than that, their games are down. Like Notre Dame, 3 million. Like Notre Dame used to be 5 million a game, Matt.
All right, hold on a second.
Go ahead.
Now, when you look at this Clemson Notre Dame rematch, if Clemson absolutely blows the doors off of Notre Dame, I think you have a leg to stand on. If the game's anything close to the way that it was played before, then this is how I think the Final Four should play out. If Alabama wins out, they're in. I think if the game is close, it's Clemson Notre Dame 2-3. No. And then I think A&M is your number 4, and I think, I'm sorry, Ohio State, sit and spin on it because you guys were the last ones in the door. You were the last ones to start playing games. You painted yourself into a corner. And do I think Ohio State is one of the 4 best teams? Yes, absolutely. However, I'm not going to throw a participation trophy to them because they joined the party late, and it's not their fault. but as a conference, grow a set. It took one of your cellar dwellers, Nebraska, to be the one to hold the mantle for the conference and push and advocate for the games to be played. So I think there is a level of accountability to, if you want to be on the political side of, oh, well, we're worried about COVID, we're looking after our players. Well, then, when you don't get invited to the college football playoffs, then don't bitch. Because you don't get to sit there on one side and say, oh, we're looking out for the safety of our players on one hand, but then bitch that you're left out of the playoffs because the SEC jumped real quick on, we're playing. The ACC said, we're playing. So there should be, when you're playing 8 to 10 games, award those teams that played, as opposed to, well, we played 5 and 3 of them were cupcakes. I don't care if you beat DeVry by 70. Tough break.
All right, but that's where you're wrong. A&M has only played 2 ranked games, and they got killed by Alabama. It's like 52 to 24. That game, as the committee would say, is a non-compete. Their only other ranked win is Florida, and once Alabama crushes them in the SEC championship, that's not going to look much better. I think the only way Ohio State is out is if they lose to Northwestern. I think if it's a close loss, they could even use that as a thing because it's another close ranked loss to a top 10 Northwestern team. I might have said Nebraska there, but I meant Northwestern because they've beat ranked Penn State. I know Penn State didn't end up ranked, but that's how the committee sees it for whatever reason. And then Indiana, and then they're going to have the Northwestern win, like that's going to be ranked in their final ranking. So they're going to have more ranked wins than A&M no matter what. And A&M's loss was so bad. I honestly just think they're there as a buffer to keep Iowa State out. Like there's no way, unless Ohio State loses, which if they lose, then I don't know what the committee does. Like I honestly don't think that they keep them out at 5-1. I just think that the way they set this up, and if they did do that, I think Oklahoma would get in. I think A&M has zero chance here. And because it goes back to your Notre Dame and Clemson thing, I think that they have an issue because of all the repeats in the playoffs. People don't want to see Alabama and Clemson in the first round. So I think what you might get is you might get Alabama, Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, if they lose, will fall to 4. And you might get that matchup. And then it's Clemson and Ohio State again for a rematch. That game was pretty close last year. But again, you're getting the same exact teams. Clemson, this would be the 3rd time that they've played Ohio State in the playoffs. So then do you keep it exactly as it is and have Clemson, Notre Dame match up round 3? I don't think that they do because I don't think that they want Notre Dame potentially to win that game. I think the only reason they do that is if they know Clemson will win or they're feeling strongly that Clemson will win the 3rd round too. Like if it's a gigantic blowout of Notre Dame and then they're like, okay, because I just don't think that they want Notre Dame to get into the championship game and lose to Alabama 42-10 because that would just ruin the entire season. Like they need to make sure that the college football national championship game is going to be decent. And I really don't know how they can do it. Because Alabama looks to be head and shoulders above everyone. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Florida will play them really close this weekend. But I don't even know if Clemson is going to be that game. And so do you sit there, if Clemson loses, do you still put them in at number 4? Because that's the last scenario. What if Notre Dame wins? They stay at 2. I think Ohio State gets bumped to 3, and they're looking at it and they say, okay, well, we'll just take the winner of that game to play Alabama. It doesn't really matter. But who do you put at 4 in that scenario, Matt?
I don't know.
Because you're going to say, oh, Clemson, they lost 2 games, but everyone's tired of that Clemson-Alabama matchup. Do you throw an A&M matchup? They got killed. Like, no. Then do you throw Iowa State in there for real? They'll get killed. That would be worse. at that point, that's why I'm kind of disappointed that they didn't put Coastal Carolina higher, because I think if that scenario plays out, you put Coastal Carolina at 4 or Cincinnati. I think Coastal Carolina has a better case because they've played better teams than Iowa State. Their conference beat Iowa State. Coastal Carolina beat Kansas in the Big 12. So you can't say that they're not competing with them. Coastal Carolina just has the best resume out of all the rest of the teams that are left. Unless you throw a miracle Indiana team up there, but even then, that's even worse than letting Ohio State in. I don't know, because Penix is out. And if you jump Oklahoma in there, which I think is what they're setting up, I think their hope is that Oklahoma wins because they know Iowa State's up there just to boost them. And if Clemson loses, it's going to be Alabama, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, Ohio State, and then that's your playoffs. So
I mean, I guess, like, do I want to see the same teams in the playoffs every year? No, I don't. Honestly, I don't. However, if the way that it's played out, that if that's the way that you're going to rank them, and you're going to put it in a situation where Notre Dame Clemson plays, and it ends up being, regardless of whether it's a Clemson loss or a Notre Dame loss, if it's a back and forth game, and you're looking at it being decided by late in the fourth quarter by a field goal, you can't keep one of those two teams out. It's the same situation as a couple years ago where Alabama and Georgia played neck and neck. Like, you can't be in a spot where you're leaving one of them out because of playing that game. Now, you did make a good point when you're looking at the Alabama blowing Florida out of the water, because they had that loss to LSU is a really bad loss, and then losing to A&M, like, pretty much puts them out. Like, by getting beat by Alabama, that puts them out. A really bad loss to Alabama, I think, opens the door to a team like Cincinnati.
We'll see, and this is where I'm going to bring it up. So I think the committee, I think that's basically what's killing the sport, because there's no rhyme or reason. Like, their own rankings contradict each other. So if you bring in the BCS computers back, because they keep this going, I have it up right here on Twitter. I'll try to share it. If it's, I don't know if I'm logged in. I think I'm logged in as myself. You can follow me at Richie Leahy. Or I'll put it on the Southbound Sports one. I'll just retweet it. Right now, Cincinnati would be 6th. They'd be right behind A&M. I bet with their conference champion win, they would jump them. If Clemson loses, Cincinnati would be right there. They would be the 4th team because they hit all the criteria. They're undefeated. And even just throwing that in there, they have Indiana 7th behind them. So if crazier things to happen, maybe Indiana would jump in the other system. Now, I don't think the BCS is prepared for teams that don't have even schedules. So this year would be a little bit different. But they have Coastal Carolina right behind Iowa State at 9 and 10. So they're still undervaluing Coastal Carolina because the Big 12 looked like crap. That's why the committee themselves, they're like, the Big 12 looks all right. But realistically, they don't. So that's the one thing that I think if you're looking at this, and then my last topic for today, because it said Facebook might have got disconnected. Facebook says we're still on, so I don't know how long we've gone. I know we're closing up on an hour. But early signing day. The only beef that I think is going to just keep ruining the sport, Matt, is signing day is going to be affected by these playoff spots. You keep having the same 3 or 4 teams in. All they have to say to recruits is, hey, we've been in the playoffs every year. They probably don't even need to cheat. I mean, in college basketball, you can't say, hey, come to Duke, we're going to be in the Final Four, because they haven't. I mean, the Final Four has been different. Like, you had Loyola Chicago make the Final Four a couple years ago. They played Michigan. Like, they had a legit chance to be in the national championship game. That would be the Coastal Carolina this year. Coastal Carolina has 0 path. No matter what happens this year, their program is not going to get any better. They're never going to be able to compete. Just like Boise State, they're going to be at that lower tier. And I think Now you're starting to see a divide between the higher level programs where we can just bring up Florida State and Michigan. Are they going to be able to jump and climb their way back up to compete with Clemson and Ohio State? Because not only are they losing on the field, they're now losing in recruiting every year. Where a decade ago, you would have some years where you jumped in, some years where you jumped back. Now, these teams, they're just processing people, and they're in the top every year. So even like a Georgia that's trying to compete with Alabama, they can be close, but even a close second doesn't make a difference if you look in terms of results. Like you let your quarterback go. Maybe if they would have kept Justin Fields, maybe Georgia would be up there. But I think that is what, if you're a fan of another team, why would you care? Like if you're a fan of Indiana, the Big Ten absolutely screwed them. And I know that their game got canceled because I tweeted this out. The Big Ten came out and they did their championship week matchup, Matt. They put Purdue against Indiana in their bucket game. That game did not help Indiana at all. If they win, no one cares. No one watches that game. Are they going to get into the playoffs maybe as a backdoor if Ohio State loses? Nope. You know why? Because no one cares about Purdue. And they were a Big Ten 0. They were going to put that game on the Big Ten network. Indiana could have played Iowa, a team that the college committee has ranked right now. Would have been another ranked win for Indiana. Indiana's only loss is to a top 10 Ohio State, even if Ohio State were to lose. Indiana could have snuck in. Indiana could have snuck in as that fourth team, Matt. But instead, the Big Ten was like, you know what? We're going to put Michigan in that second place game because why? No one knows. The game was already canceled because Michigan still has coronavirus issues. So Indiana had to cancel and Michigan had to cancel. So the Big Ten has like no marquee games this week. It's just a Big Ten championship game. They tried to line it up for television. They had Ohio State play Northwestern at noon. Then they were going to have Minnesota, Wisconsin, which definitely screwed Penn State. Like, you don't think Penn State would have wanted to play Wisconsin or even Minnesota? Get another high-profile TV game to help recruiting?
No, not this year. Nobody wants to play.
It doesn't matter, Matt. It's right after signing day. The whole thing the Big Ten said was, here are our rules. This is why we have to push the season back, like you said. They said we're going to push it back to be safe. And then we're going to have this crossover matchup, which I thought was a great idea. But then they just said, you know what? This let Ohio State play in the championship game. They didn't meet the requirements. And then let's not do that crossover thing either, because that makes too much sense. Like, we don't want to help Penn State out. Like, heaven forbid Penn State gets another game on television. People don't follow the sport that closely, but they're going to say, you know what? You know who needs that bump, Matt? Jim Harbaugh. We better put him in the 7 p.m. primetime matchup spot against Iowa as a chance to redeem himself with a big road win. That had to be what they were thinking. Because otherwise, I don't know. I saw a lot of people say maybe Michigan's athletic director just got bullied into that game. I wouldn't be surprised if Harbaugh himself requested it. Because that's the kind of bonehead moves I've seen him do, where he's been like, yeah, you know what? We are going to play that game. We are going to schedule Notre Dame. They canceled Arkansas the 1 year to add Notre Dame. The year the Shea Patterson came, that was a loss that put Michigan back in the polls. They could have been in a New Year's Six bowl that year, Matt. But instead, no, just an opening loss. So I wouldn't have been shocked if Harbaugh said, we'll play Iowa. Our team will be ready. Unfortunately, they're not. So we won't get to see that game to see what happens. And I think Michigan's going to put out the bowl game, but I'm just saying right there, Cincinnati's dropping back. They're not going to put Coastal Carolina in. Indiana had a chance. The Big Ten, for whatever reason, just give them the primetime matchup against Iowa. It's a ranked win if they win, and if Ohio State ends up losing, then you tell the committee, look, put in one loss Northwestern or put in one loss Indiana. Problem solved. Then you don't have to put Iowa State in because it seems like that's what they don't want to do. So, I don't know. With early signing day, we're going to get back into it next week, but I wanted to put that on the topic because I think what's going to happen when I'm looking at these boards here, you have Alabama number 1, Ohio State number 2, Clemson number 5. The same 3 teams are going to be top 5 in recruiting if they keep making the playoffs, Matt. That's my final note. Do you have anything else for college football? You could even talk about it. I know I went long, but I was trying to wrap it up.
No, I was looking at I was excited to see that Mackenzie Milton, and for those of you who may vaguely remember him, he had the really bad leg injury for UCF a couple years ago. He's rehabbed back and has committed to Florida State. He's transferring out of UCF, and I'm curious to see what his role is going to be because they have Jordan Travis, who's their redshirt sophomore quarterback, and I want to see what he's bringing to the table because when they interviewed him, he said about how he liked the development of the offensive line, which tells me that he hasn't watched one lick of film on Florida State. But I think he was part of that team that won the national championship with Scott Frost, and with Frost pushing the amount of leadership and teamwork. I want to see what he's going to bring to the Seminoles, and if Mike Norvell is able to recruit that type of player, and you're watching like you've talked about a lot with Michigan, where you're processing guys out. I want to see that. He's in his first year, but what Norvell moving guys in and out, I want to see exactly what he's going to do with not just this class, but the follow-up classes, because I think in some ways you are right that you do have a very short window to establish yourself as a contender. And if you can play that card briefly, but if you don't capitalize on that, then you're stuck in this little brother type role. And I think that's where some of these other teams have fallen out of favor, is that you have that window where you make the jump, you get the recruiting bump of, hey, we can be the class that knocks off, the big dogs, and then they don't do it, and then you just become, well, we're just average.
Well, I actually didn't even bring in those stats because I was waiting to see if Harbaugh was going to be fired or not. I guess not really fired, but I jumped to the NFL because, and I guess I should mention it because I keep getting questions about it off the air. But I will say, Harbaugh, it's not a Harbaugh problem, and it's not even a Michigan problem, because if you're looking at, like, can a coach come in and turn it around? Yes. You even asked me, like, why would someone want to come to Michigan when they have Ohio State there? You're expected to lose to Ohio State at this point. Like, the point for Harbaugh, he's losing games and getting killed by Wisconsin and other teams that you're out recruiting. If Harbaugh was only losing to Ohio State, he would be there for life. They were just talking about a lifetime contract 2 years ago. But then whenever you're getting overtime games against Army, and I know they run the triple option, so it's a little bit different, and then you're looking completely out of sorts against Indiana, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you're coming into a situation where Michigan right now looks like complete garbage. They could be the worst team in the Big Ten. They're recruiting a top 10 class now. There are literally only a handful of schools that can have a horrible season like this and still bring in a top 10 class. And that's why I think if you're a coach coming in, you look at this and you say, oh, if Harbaugh goes to the NFL right now, I'm landing in, like, even bringing up Matt Campbell, because he's come up again. And someone said, because I think I brought in like a Dennis Dodd thing saying that Matt Campbell wouldn't leave for Michigan. Someone, like one of his personal assistants or whatever, said that Matt Campbell would 100% be interested in the Michigan job. And I was thinking, well, of course. He's looking at his recruiting class at Iowa State. They have a top 10 team right now. He can't recruit there. So he's ranked 50th tomorrow going into signing day.
Well, here,
he could jump to Michigan and have a top 10 class. And guess what? He doesn't have to compete with Oklahoma or Texas anymore. And guess what? His salary is going to be a top 10 salary. Harbaugh's like a top 3 salary. And he hasn't even been preparing guys. So if you're looking at it, it's still one of the top jobs. Even Urban Meyer said on Fox, I don't know if you've seen it, but there was like a viral video that came out this week about it, where Urban Meyer was telling them, like, don't give up. Like, you don't even have to blow it up. He thinks that Harbaugh could turn it over or turn it around if they got rid of the stuff like that's been holding him back. Like, he's still guaranteed like hard-nosed football and stuff. And I've said the same thing. If he cleans house and lets coaches come in and just run their stuff, where he's not making them run 2 tight end sets and fullbacks, when he's not even recruiting those guys, I think Michigan could easily turn it around. I mean, Notre Dame just survived the 4-8 season a few years ago. Why not? Because you can recruit the players. If Clemson went like 2 and whatever, they would not have a top 10 class. They've just broken into the top 10 after winning 2 national championships. Like, they were below Michigan before. Michigan hasn't won anything, Matt. They haven't even won the Big Ten in over a decade.
Oh, I know.
So you're looking at
Speaking of 2 national championships, there is a coach now that's on the market that I think would be worth looking at. Whether you're Michigan, whether you're even if you're falling out of favor with Pat Narduzzi at Pitt. If James Franklin decides that he's getting out of Penn State, that you may want to look at. And it's recently fired Auburn head coach Gus Malzahn. You laugh.
No, because I think Malzahn would be a great...
Who's been competitive against his rival? Malzahn.
Yeah, but he loses too many games like Harbaugh. I was thinking, he should have him as an OC, offensive coordinator, because you need a guy that just doesn't make mistakes. Like, even PJ Fleck kind of runs that type of system where he's the head, and I'm not saying the offensive system. I'm saying where he's the CEO type coach, and he's not worried about calling plays or whatever. I know he probably puts his input in, but he lets his assistants do their stuff, and he's more of like the hype man, kind of like Coach O did at LSU. I mean, that's why LSU turned it around. When they're losing now, they just have Coach O as the hype man. Coach O was an awful head coach until he just learned to let go and step back. And so if he can do it, Harbaugh can do it, because Michigan's kind of just like LSU in the same situation. LSU's been behind Alabama for a decade. All he had to do was let go and get lucky by landing a good transfer quarterback. Michigan landed a transfer quarterback. Harbaugh squeezed him to death and then turned him into, I don't even know what, when Shea Patterson left. Like, I felt bad for him. But it looks like he has a dynamic quarterback in Cade McNamara from what we've seen this year. Let a guy come in, an offensive coordinator, hire a unknown guy or a guy that has stuff. Come in, say, me? You're going to run your stuff.
Hire me, Jim.
You?
Yes, hire me.
People would be so mad at you bringing your wing T stuff in, Matt.
I have a proven track record of success.
You should apply at Illinois. They don't know what they don't know what they're doing. They could just offer you the head coach job. That's my last thing, because who knows what they're doing? Because people are saying, well, what jobs are open? Like, what jobs are high jobs? Or you can't say that Auburn's a better job than Michigan because you get paid less. You're playing a better rival. I mean, Alabama's way better than Ohio State at this point. They win how many national championships? So it's basically a worse Michigan. If Michigan were to open up, they'd be the best job available. So they could pretty much pick the pick. The one thing that stood out, though, is Urban Meyer talked passionately about how much he loved Michigan's tradition and how he thinks that they can get back to that. He's never said that about Texas. So for all the people saying, like, oh, he would never go to Michigan, I don't know. Maybe he sees it and he thinks, all these people think that Michigan can't turn it around. Maybe I can. They give Harbaugh one more year. I mean, if they would announce tomorrow, or let's say Harbaugh signs his class.
Let it go. Pretend you're Elsa and let it go. He's not going to Michigan.
No, I'm just saying, if Harbaugh's going to sign this class tomorrow, because they're not going to make an announcement, they're not going to pull Michigan State and announce it like right now or tomorrow morning that Harbaugh's gone as people are signing. But if they were to like have a smooth transition where they were like, hey, Harbaugh's going to the NFL, but we're bringing in this guy, and I'm not saying it's Urban Meyer, but if they have that in place, like, hey, we're bringing in Big 12 champ Matt Campbell, or we're bringing in AAC champ Luke Ficklick, I don't think they would really lose the class either. Because it's not like Harbaugh's going to be going to another college. Like a lot of college, like when they lose their coach, he's going elsewhere, and then he's going to try to pull in recruits. I mean, Norvell did that with Memphis guys. He was bringing them to Florida State just to fill out his class last minute. Harbaugh could sign, seal, and deliver this and say, like, look, I'm just going back to the NFL, guys. And if you stick with Michigan, maybe I'll draft you in a few years. Good old boy, he's back in it. No one leaves. Now, that's saying that Michigan has a competent athletic department to pull something like that off, which you know is not going to happen. There's going to be contract disputes. Who knows if he'll be hired? But like I said, because I always compare it to Penn State's situation, Penn State's having an awful year. They only have 5 4-stars coming in. They have a 19th ranked class. Like, there's no grass is greener for Penn State. Like, for whatever reason, they've fallen off. Maybe Franklin's looking at other jobs. I don't know. I would think that if Texas was going to open, they would try to offer him. Maybe not. Maybe he's waiting on USC. They're kind of undefeated, so they've played a really weird season, which, to be fair, USC and Colorado should be playing this weekend. I don't know if I talked about that, but Colorado had to get games canceled, so they don't have as many wins. So just based on it, they're like 4-1 or whatever. USC is undefeated, and since Washington can't play this weekend, now 2-loss Oregon gets into the championship game. The Pac-12 should have just got rid of divisions and let Colorado play. They're ranked. They could be playing for a chance to play in a New Year's Six bowl. But now they have no other chance to play. They're ranked 25th. They're just riding it out. So, one other last thing for the final bell I have, and then we'll wrap it up because I don't know how long we've gone since we disconnected. The Cleveland Indians are the Indians no longer. They've announced that they're not going to be the Indians anymore. And I hope they go back to the Cleveland Spiders.
No.
Why not?
Because there's a better way that they can solve this. They can be the Cleveland baseball team.
No.
They can be blue and they can be red and they can just be plain so that no one's offended. And then they can be like the Washington football team. And that's just how we name our sports teams.
Because the Redskins, I always call them the Redskins on the show. Because until they pick a new name, the football team is so weird to talk about. Because I looked at...
They're winning?
I looked at the one of the scores over the weekend, and because I think it was on like the ESPN Fantasy app or whatever, because it had football team instead of the Redskins, I had no idea what I was looking at. And I'm going to look up the score here so I can give people an example. It was like, okay, so they beat the 49ers 23-15. The score said football team 49ers 15. And I thought, what the hell does that mean? What is the 49ers 15? So, of course, I click on it. Because I'm thinking, is that like 15 players injured, 15 players out because of coronavirus? Because you never know with these times. And it said, it had cut off the first score where Washington had 23 or whatever I said. So it should have been 23 points for the Redskins, 49ers 15, they lost the game. But instead, because I just saw football team, it made me click on it. So it's not even just a bad sports name. It's also clickbait, Matt. Their thing just says Washington.
Clickbait.
Their thing just says Washington. Because I thought the 49ers were, like, they're already banged up. Who knows what football team 49ers 15 means. I thought that's some weird phrasing. But I don't know. So the Indians, just go back to the Spiders. If you name it the baseball team, we're going to have to just keep calling it the Indians. Can't be like Pirates are playing the baseball team this weekend. People would look at you like you're an idiot.
No one looks at you like an idiot when you say the Washington football team.
I'm not even saying
that's just how we are now. That's just what it is.
They've changed nothing. And I'm not even talking about just the politics of it. I'm just saying, as a fan, people probably, unless you follow that stuff, you don't even know. Like, they say they stopped selling Redskin stuff. I've seen it at truck stops and stuff still. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to go corral all the Redskins gear? Like, some of that stuff's been unofficial anyway. Like, do you think they're not just going to have tons of the stuff from the team store? Like, they're going to get rid of Chief Wahoo. Are people going to stop banging the drums at Indians games in the outfield? What about the movie Major League? Did they go back and rewrite it like they did with E.T. and take the guns out? And they, like, just take all the Indian references out? Cut, like, 15 minutes off the movie? I don't know. What do they do, man?
I don't know.
It's crazy. Do you have anything else you want to hit on?
I think we pretty much summed it all up, but check out southboundsports.com.
Yeah, and if you're messaging us, make sure it's like on Twitter or something. We try to get back, but if we don't know about it, it's more of a Facebook thing. I guess if you're just commenting on the live video, maybe that's why, because once it's done, because we're not broadcasting it with like Facebook's thing. So, but definitely check out the website. See you there. Hopefully, we're making some announcements next week. We're going to do a Bull Pick'em, but a lot of teams are not going to Bull games, including Pitt and Michigan this year, supposedly. I don't know what's going to happen, so we're going to wait on that. I don't know if it's going to open up or what, but we'll try to do something. So check that out. It'll be on our website. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.